will India take a stand on this? Because so far, India has remained silent on crucial issues when they should have spoken, when they should have spelled out a stand. But in this particular case, do you think that India has enough room to negotiate or leverage its position?
Well, see, you when you face this sort of opposition from anyone, you need to be sure about your own facts. You need to be sure about your own economic standing, uh, both in terms of what we have and what we need to prepare in case of a very bad situation. So, the worst kind of situation that we may have to face, we must prepare the country for it. Have we prepared the country? We are telling the country that all is well. We are telling the country that we are ruling the world, that we are Vishwagurus, and that we will decide what will happen in the world. Now, that is not true. That is not correct, and that will not happen. Certainly not in a hurry.
Now, do you see a scenario where the normal functioning of the Indian household will get impacted because we don't see any signs of this war coming to an end, and no one has answers to that?
Well, that is worrisome. That's worrisome. I believe that many of the signs that we see of stress in the marketplace are signs that are more in anticipation and in terms of people reacting too early, too soon. But down the line, these things will become some things that we need to deal with. And how do we deal with them? The question is, you need to have some backup plans. Does the government have any backup plans? There are no backup plans. I don't see any backup plans.
Given the kind of chemistry which Iran and India have had since the war has broken out, do you think that Iran still has that kind of a pathway where it can allow the Indian tankers to cross through the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it depends really on how sensible the policymakers in Iran are. They've been through a lot of stress, understandably. I believe that we haven't done a great deal to reassure them, but we've done a little bit, perhaps a little bit late, but we've done a little bit to reassure them. There are many people in the public space who have come out empathetically and sympathetically to Iran. And I believe that the Iranian government must appreciate that. At least their officials on the ground in India, their diplomats on the ground in India seem to have appreciated it, which is a good thing. Now, we are not saying that you have to be friends with Iran to be enemies of the US. But let me just make it clear. It's a matter of choosing what is right between two friends that are fighting.
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. Just over a month after announcing a new trade framework with India, the United States has opened a fresh investigation into what it calls unfair trade practices by 16 major economies, which includes India, China, the European Union, and Japan. Now, the move could pave the way for new tariffs on imports from these countries as early as this summer, potentially complicating the fragile trade detente that Washington and New Delhi appeared to reach in February. Now, the investigation is being launched under Section 301 of the US Trade Act of 1974, a powerful trade enforcement mechanism that Washington has previously used to impose sweeping tariffs on China. Now, while the probe does not immediately trigger tariffs, it creates the legal pathway for new duties depending on the outcome of the investigation. Now, why has US launched this probe? Just to give a little perspective to the viewers, and then we head straight into the conversation with our special guest this evening. Now, the immediate trigger is a recent US Supreme Court ruling that struck down a central part of President Donald Trump's tariff program, weakening Washington's leverage in ongoing trade negotiations. Now, the court ruled that the administration had exceeded its authority when it imposed sweeping tariffs under emergency economic powers. Now, to maintain pressure on trading partners, the White House imposed a temporary 10% tariff on imports from all countries for 150 days under a different law. Now, that measure expires in July. The new investigation appears designed to create a more durable legal foundation for tariffs before that headline. And regarding that, US Trade Representative Jamison Greer said that the probe will examine whether certain economies have structural excess manufacturing capacity that distorts the global trade. And Washington will look at the following indicators, and I'm just reading them one by one. That what are those indicators? Persistent trade subsidies, state owned enterprise activity, subsidized lending, suppressed wages, weak labor or environmental standards, currency practices. And if such practices are found to harm the US industries, the administration could respond with country specific tariffs or other trade restrictions. Now, then the next question is that why is India on the list? India's inclusion is significant because it comes barely a month after the two countries unveiled a framework for an interim bilateral trade agreement. The February understanding between US President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi was intended to lay the groundwork for a broader India US bilateral trade agreement. And under that framework, India has agreed to reduce or eliminate tariffs on several US industrial and agricultural products. So, why this additional burden on India? So we'll try and discuss this in the light of this West Asia crisis, and what can India really do? Is it weaponizing trade? Is it an additional burden? How could India now leverage its position? Because it's just not India. There are several nations who will be undergoing this similar sort of a process. Joining me this evening is former Union Minister, rather former Foreign Affairs Minister and veteran Congress leader Salman Khurshid. So thank you so much for joining. And Mr. Khurshid is also the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Department of Congress. So thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on the program. How would you see this step of US probing countries like India and several others for unfair trade practices and also for forced labor? That's what we are told.
Well, it's very alarming, frankly. This has come when we are being told, and we are only being told, we haven't been shown that there is a formal agreement which is envisaged as far as the trade matter is concerned, and of course there was relief from the very high tariffs that he had tried to impose. The President Trump had tried to impose. There was relief. But clearly, the indication is that there is no special place for India as far as Mr. Modi's friend, Mr. Trump, is concerned. There's no special place for India. There are no special concessions. But of the list that you've just read out, I can only say that we keep very good company. I mean, the kind of countries that are mentioned, it certainly means that we keep very good company. Now, these are some very fundamental things in terms of trade policy, foreign policy that governments all along the world will have to consider, but particularly because we are concerned about our government and our people, we obviously are to take it very, very seriously, because it's like giving with one hand and taking away with another. I mean, what kind of relationship do we have? What transparency is there? What consideration is there? What a sense of being engaged with a friend is there? These are all very, very big questions. And where is the pressure being placed? Is the pressure being placed on us in trade in order to achieve something else somewhere else, etc.? These are questions that come galore, and I believe that the government will have to be very, very careful as it sort of negotiates and engages with the United States, because everything is opaque, everything is unclear, and it's sort of on demand. Like they just want to tell you that we demand this and you must fall in line and do as we tell you. I think this is absolutely disastrous. It's disastrous to have a friendship of that kind.
But Mr. Khurshid, I mean, I really don't understand. I'm rather confused about the kind of stand which India can take. Will India take a stand on this? Because so far, India has remained silent on crucial issues when they should have spoken, when they should have spelt out a stand. But in this particular case, do you think that India has enough room to negotiate or leverage its position?
Well, see, you when you face this sort of opposition from anyone, you need to be sure about your own facts. You need to be sure about your own economic standing, uh, both in terms of what we have and what we need to prepare in case of a very bad situation. So, the worst kind of situation that we may have to face, we must prepare the country for it. Have we prepared the country? We are telling the country that all is well. We are telling the country that we are ruling the world, that we are Vishwa Gurus, and that we will decide what will happen in the world. Now that is not true. That is not correct, and that will not happen. Certainly not in a hurry. And now we don't even know. Frankly, we don't even know ultimately where does Russia stand, where does China stand. One thing is clear. One thing is clear that America is a little careful about pushing Russia and pushing China. But we don't fall in that category, as we should, and possibly not fall in that category because we haven't played footsie with them as far as China is concerned entirely. And we can't, and we shouldn't. So if we have to maintain our autonomy and our choice of what we need to do in foreign policy and the domestic policy, we need to keep our options open. But the United States is trying to close our options. They show us a little carrot, and then they just want to close all options for us. Now, surviving for a carrot alone is not good enough. And as you just said, that there is a very loud silence that you have seen from India in the recent weeks, that something dramatic happens in the world, and something not just dramatic but something lethal happens in the world, and we keep quiet, and we are told that there are 3 telephone calls that we've made. What is India's voice? Is India's voice heard anywhere in the world? That's the question I ask, and that's the question that I believe everybody in parliament who is not with the government, who is in the opposition, would want to have an answer on. But they're not even willing to have a debate on all this. If there was a debate on all this in parliament, at least something would become clear.
I would want to come to now the West Asia crisis. Now, today also we saw in Parliament that the opposition demanded a discussion on this West Asia crisis, and of course, the crisis arising out of this entire Iran war. The LPG shortage, whether it's a glass industry, whether it's a steel making industry, whether it's things like paints, diapers, polythenes, everything is getting impacted. Now, do you see a scenario where the normal functioning of the Indian household will get impacted because we don't see any signs of this war coming to an end, and no one has answers to that?
Well, that is worrisome. That's worrisome. I believe that many of the signs that we see of stress in the marketplace are signs that are more in anticipation and in terms of people reacting too early, too soon. But down the line, these things will become some things that we need to deal with. And how do we deal with them? The question is, you need to have some backup plans. Does the government have any backup plans? There are no backup plans. I don't see any backup plans. The issue about gas cylinders is already becoming a problem. We hear of restaurants closing down. We hear of places using wood, as though we don't have enough trouble with pollution in this country, that we are now going to fall back by begin to use wood cookers and so on and so forth. So I think it's just frightening to think of how much worse it can get, and how ill prepared we seem to be, and so ill prepared that we remain. We were ill prepared when COVID happened, and our party and our party leadership kept emphasizing that you've got to be prepared, you've got to be ready, something awful, something terrible can happen. And we did nothing. We did absolutely nothing. We did a little bit, but too little, too late, etc. Now, I just think the same sort of situation is going to arise now. We have no idea how soon the conflict will end and in what manner it will end and what will be the consequences of wherever it ends and however it ends. So I would just say that there's great uncertainty, and anything that is said would only add to the uncertainty, which we certainly don't want to be guilty of. We would want to reassure the country, provided we were shared with some information was given to us by the government. We would want to reassure the country that ultimately it will be tough, but we will get through. We must get through, we must prevail. But how do you do it when there is not a shred of evidence or information being made available to you in Parliament or outside Parliament?
Absolutely. Now, there's another story which is creating a lot of confusion since morning, and that is, again, it's been planted through the sources, and how credible the sources are, everyone knows. It's been planted that Iran will allow Indian flagged tankers to transit the Strait of Hormuz, which is, of course, a conduit of for 40% of the South Asian nation's crude imports. Now, this is coming from an Indian government source, but I have also seen reports of on the Iranian side, which are denying this story. Now, given the kind of chemistry which Iran and India have had since the war has broken out, do you think that Iran still has that kind of a pathway where it can allow the Indian tankers to cross through the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it depends really on how sensible the policymakers in Iran are. They've been through a lot of stress, understandably. I believe that we haven't done a great deal to reassure them, but we've done a little bit, perhaps a little bit late, but we've done a little bit to reassure them. There are many people in the public space who have come out empathetically and sympathetically to Iran, and I believe that the Iranian government must appreciate that. At least their officials on the ground in India, their diplomats on the ground in India seem to have appreciated it, which is a good thing. Now, we're not saying that you have to be friends with Iran to be enemies of the US. But let me just make it clear. It's a matter of choosing what is right between two friends that are fighting. It happened in Ukraine and Russia. It's happening now again, where the GCC countries are joining hands against Iran. And of course, they're joining hands against Iran because the trouble started with Israel pushing America to attack Iran, and then Iran retaliating and responding. Now, we could have done this, is something that we can talk about till the cows come home. But the fact remains that India has a very difficult position to take. We have friends on both sides. And if we don't have friends, we at least have relationships on both sides that we should preserve. We have no problem with that. We're not asking the government to choose one against the other. We should preserve relations. But what is the worth of relations if you don't have the courage to tell your friend that there is a line that must be drawn where they must stop? Or in the country or from the country, a voice must go out to the world to say, India is unhappy and India is not willing to let this continue. Please stop. Does India have the courage to say this? Does India have the capacity and the position today in the world to say this? Mr. Modi, our Prime Minister, has traveled most extensively in the world during the years that he's been India's Prime Minister. Why is he not traveling now? He traveled on the eve of the attack that Israel made. Why doesn't he travel now? Why doesn't he go to those very areas which are being bombarded and which are being attacked and say, I am here and I want this to stop? And perhaps the friends will feel that now that he's gone that far, we must stop. So essentially, it's the voice of India that is missing. It's not being heard anywhere in the world. And sadly, it's not even being heard in our own country.
Absolutely. But you made a mention of the fact that Prime Minister Modi went to Israel just on the eve of the war. Now, do you think that India really has lost Iran's trust? How can Iran trust India now? Will we have the same ties, the same cultural bonding which India had earlier? By this particular visit of Prime Minister Modi, do you think that India has lost that trust of Iran?
Well, these things happen, and you have to make amends if you think that something has gone wrong. to Iran's credit, I believe that we have a very, very deep relationship with them, uh, and that they would be willing. They would be willing to go, because they're also, Iran is also not in a very good position. They are fighting with their back to the wall. They have suffered. They have been injured, but they are, with great courage and great resolution, they are fighting back. So I'm not sure that they want to lose India as a friend at this critical time. And if there is something they can do for India, I'm sure they will. They will. But obviously, they would want to see how much India is willing to do for them. It's going to be a two-way thing. Now, when India does something for Iran and does with Iran, India has to be able to, with courage, speak to the United States to say, we can't just give up everybody because you have a problem. We have a relationship with you and we want to preserve a relationship with you, but you can't do it to the exclusion of our other friends, whether it's Russia, whether it's not a friend but certainly our neighbor China, or it is Iran. And this is something that we must get them to understand, that you can't exclusively decide who India can be in engagement with and what the extent of that engagement will be.
No, but Mr. Khurshid, you're talking about a candor which is expected of India, some plain speaking which India should do, that we cannot exclude our old friends at the cost of America. But the government is seemingly being found wanted on this front. And they are not speaking. Now, what are those compelling factors? Some say it's Adani, some say it's Epstein files. I'm not getting into the reasons, but the silence is not broken on the part of the government. So how will Iran win its trust? Of course, we are ready to believe that Iran will go all out to ensure that the ties are back. They have the India and Iran both have the same bonding. But even Prime Minister Modi, or for that matter, Indian MEA, has to do some tightrope walking for that and exemplify through their actions.
We are not questioning any tightrope walking. We understand diplomacy is not an easy game. We do understand that. But at least the broad principles must be clear. And the broad principles must be stated to the people at home in India, in Parliament. The broad principles of how we will deal with Iran, to the extent that you can make them available in public, must be stated. Everything is not necessarily what needs to be given to the public. There are confidential areas and so on. You can preserve those confidential areas, perhaps share them only with top leaders in the opposition, but come clean on where we stand. You ask me, I've had some experience. Our government in India ran close to Iran. There are many things that we did with Iran, etc. But do any one of us know exactly where we stand vis-a-vis Iran? We may go and convey our condolence to the Iranian embassy, but do we even have any information that we can give them that will give them greater confidence as far as India is concerned, without in any way undermining whatever relations we have with the US? And as you've just mentioned, our relations with the US seem like one-sided. I mean, whatever they want, they do. Whatever we need and desire, or what we want, they don't even sit down to listen to that, etc. Did anyone ask us? I mean, when Mr. Modi went to Israel, was he told that there was going to be an attack imminent? Was he not told? Now, in both ways, there's something terribly wrong. If you are trusted and you are friends and you are not told, that is bad. And if you are actually told and you keep quiet, that is bad. So somebody must now come out clean and tell us what exactly happened, what compulsions operated, why they could not share it with us immediately, etc. Many, many questions there. They need to be answered.
Also coming to the fact that there is a very evident opacity when it comes to revealing things to the opposition, or for that matter even consulting the opposition, because you all have been in the government in the past. You've handled Iran, you've handled America. There's no consultation. But do you believe, Mr. Khurshid, that the need of the hour is that the Prime Minister should call an all-party meeting, given the gravity of the crisis and the kind of crisis which is emerging out of Iran war? Do we think that an all-party meeting should be called immediately on this?
Absolutely, and I think it's nothing that's completely new to our system. as far as our government was concerned, under several prime ministers. We were constantly in touch with the opposition. We even ensured that the opposition was involved in whatever decisions that were taken. But it's only now, since 2014, that the opposition has been kept completely aside, as though they don't understand anything, as though they don't matter at all. And this would give strength to this government. For the first, I mean, it was the last thing that we would want in the opposition, to give strength to this government. But this is a matter of national interest. So if the government gets strength because in a matter of national interest, we stand by the government, what is the problem? But if they don't want to take strength, if they don't want to get encouraged, and they don't want to be fortified by the presence of the opposition, let them choose who in the opposition is helpful to them. After all, they did that after Operation Sindoor, sense of isolation. They sent delegations out to the world, to the wide world, etc. And they asked Congress party members. I went, Congress party MPs, to accompany those delegations. And despite having differences with them, we went along and we stood by them, because we wanted one voice to go to the world. One single voice, that's the voice of India, must go and resonate in the world. But that's the easy option that they're not accepting.
Absolutely. And while we speak to you, Mr. Khurshid, there are multiple explosions which have been reported across Iran's capital, that is Tehran, other cities, as US-Israeli attacks continue. Iraq has shut down oil port operations after these deadly attacks on two foreign oil tankers, as Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, and Saudi Arabia have intercepted more Iranian missiles and drones. So which is very clear that Iran is in no mood to back down. Even America doesn't seem to be in a mood to have any kind of a quick exit plan. I don't know how much of a strategy is ready as far as the exit plan is concerned. But what is your gut feeling, and what can you sense that when do you see this war ending?
Well, I think it's a matter of appetite. I think the appetite that the US has, given that they're doing everything in the backdrop of the November midterm election, that their appetite is limited. There is certainly no appetite for casualties, and that's why there will not be any boots on the ground. As far as Iran is concerned, I believe that they are fighting for their life. They're fighting for their existence. They're fighting for their dignity. And therefore, they would be far more engaged and involved in that fight than the US is. So this could go on, but it's not US alone. It's the Israelis that are pushing the US, because they've had the buffer of the US forces to be able to fight the 40-year dream that they had of fighting Iran. So they will continue to push, but I believe ultimately the US will have to take a call on it for themselves, and not simply for the sake of any other country, including Israel. And I think that the formulations that are coming from the US president, many of those formulations give people hope that there are certain openings coming up, certainly somewhere, because more that the time passes and less becomes the chance of being able to establish what they went out to do, which was essentially to do a regime change. They'll begin to understand that regime change is not happening. It's not working. The transition has already happened from one leadership to another leadership, but that's not their idea of regime change. And therefore, they may think whether it's really worth it or not. And as a face saver, they come and say that, look, let's sit down, talk, find some solutions. Possibly Iran will offer some solutions when it gets to that point.
Right. One last question before I wind up the interview, sir, that there are lots of reports of how Iran has used North Korean technology. The entire war is fought through artificial intelligence. And is that the reason where Iran has absolutely proven as a dark horse? They overpowered the military capacity of America? Can you also sense the same thing?
There's a lot of talk about this, but it's very difficult to judge at this stage. I think people who are well informed and people who understand strategic matters will come out with greater details once the main conflict is over. But certainly, whatever it is, it couldn't all have been done by Iran on its own. There must have been help from various partners that Iran is being able to put into this battle. But clearly, they are no walkover. I mean, they've fought back. They have fought back. They've held their position despite very heavy losses. They've held their position, and fighting against the might of Israel and the United States of America was not an easy job. But they've done it. They've done it, and therefore I think there are many lessons to be learned for all of us. But once we know more from strategic experts, I guess one can talk more about it.
But do you think that this is also a battle of sorts for who is a bigger superpower now? Now, the fact that there are reports coming in that China and Russia are on the same page when it comes to helping and protecting Iran. So, in a way, is it like two powers getting together to challenge America? So, is it that China and Russia seemingly, and as the situation is unfolding, do you think that these two powers could decide when the Iran war will end?
Well, they would have a role. I mean, I think anybody at this point would have a role to bring things to an end. To get started is I think a more difficult job, but to put it to an end is tough. But more people can get involved in putting an end to the war that's going on, because war coming to an end doesn't mean that everything becomes hunky-dory that very day. You stop fighting at each other, you stop killing each other, but there is a lot more that needs to be done to clear up the debris, as it were, of the war. We've seen what's happened in Gaza. Now everyone's forgotten what happened in Gaza, but Gaza was flattened out. Now there's nobody talking about that. How are people living there today? How are they in tents or not in tents? And how are they managing their supply chains, the food, electricity, water, etc.? So all that has to be done once the main conflict and the firing comes to an end. But I think there has to be a major rethink in Israel. We don't know from the ground Israel's population's feelings, but I'm quite sure that the population of Israel doesn't quite think along the lines of the Prime Minister of Israel. They also want to live in peace. People all want to live in peace. But today the complicating factor is, when the war comes to an end, what will happen with the GCC countries? What will happen with the Arab countries that have pushed themselves into this battle or have been pushed into this battle? They'll need to sort things out as well. So there are many complicating features that will probably go on for many, many months after the firing comes to an end, hostilities come to an end, and then the rebuilding process starts. Rebuilding of faith, rebuilding of the rule-based order, the rebuilding of people's shattered lives, etc. That will take many, many months.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khurshid, for joining on HW News. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. All the best.